to new business and item number 9, which is adoption of a resolution to approve selection of the Envision Campbell Plan Consultant, change to the scope of work for consultant services necessary to facilitate the preparation of the plan, environmental impact report, and zoning ordinance, and authorized for the city manager to negotiate, award, and execute the contract with the De Novo Planning Group. Paul Cohen.
Thank you, Mayor Baker, members of the City Council. So this is a very important project, as you know, and preparing the staff report was actually really an interesting process because it will allow the public to kind of see where we began and where we are today sequentially, and I thought it was really good pulling this all together. So what's under consideration tonight is for the City Council to approve selection of De Novo Planning Group to facilitate preparation of the Envision Campbell Plan, approve the scope of work changes for consultant services as recommended by the Council Subcommittee, and authorize the City Manager to award the contract to De Novo and enter into a professional services agreement. So here's all the background. So we started this process back in January of 2015 as part of the Council priority setting session. At that point, that's when the City Council is looking at what are the things we want to work on this next fiscal year. And at that point, with all the different developments that were occurring and the changes to the community, we were at a crossroad where the Council felt it was time to relook at the general plan. So as a conclusion of that priority setting session, the Council basically requested to formalize the priorities and return with the final approval. And then you also expressed the desire to conduct a study session to learn more about what an update process would entail and best practices. So June 2nd is when we had our study session with the City Council. And at that meeting, the idea was to understand what an update process will entail, what the costs would be, how long it could possibly take, what the approach would be, what type of advisory committee should the city create. And as a conclusion of that meeting, you agreed to form a GPAC, and that's the General Plan Advisory Group. On July 7th, the Council briefly discussed the General Plan update. As part of this branding, that we had the branding title on that agenda, and then that evolved into a following discussion under the council reports where there was just this general brief discussion of, well, what's the update duration and GPAC member selection questions and how would the GPAC be utilized and what are the GPAC's overall knowledge of policies and ordinance, how the council would get involved, and the public as well. So there was just all these questions that came out, and the council agreed that let's have staff return with the staff report so we can further dive into this, which led us to the August 18th meeting where the council discussed the update duration, GPAC roles and responsibilities, their utilization, staff roles, the general public's participation, and staff also brought forward a draft request for a proposal to begin the recruitment for a consultant. The council concluded by expressing a desire to have GPAC meetings open to the public, but there was really no consensus. You talked about that, there was individual comments, but there was really no formal vote. There was not enough time to really comment on the RFP, so that was continued. And then there was a discussion of, well, should we really have a purpose statement before a visioning process? Then comes the September 15th meeting. Council discussed the GPAC meetings being open to the public, the draft RFP, selection of a council subcommittee, and a draft purpose statement. The council concluded by approving the draft RFP without changes, authorizing the city manager to distribute it. They selected a council subcommittee consisting of Vice Mayor Gibbons and Council Member Christina, and you continued the GPAC meeting discussion as well as the purpose statement until the October 6th meeting, where once again you discussed GPAC meetings being open to the public participation, alternatives, how would the alternatives of the GPAC participate, as well as the draft purpose statement. You concluded by agreeing that the GPAC meetings should be open to the public, allow the public to observe but not participate in the discussions, and creating a purpose statement in GPAC to review and suggest changes. So as you can see, from where we started to October, it's a lot of months that have gone by, and now we're into the following year. So it does take some time to go through this. So the council subcommittee, the city council agreed to have the subcommittee, and the city council also agreed that the subcommittee should review all the proposals that are submitted as part of the RFP, and that the interview would be basically focusing on the most qualified consultants, and that the subcommittee would then make a recommendation back to the city council. And at that meeting, he also agreed to allow the staff to manage the consultant contract. So the RFP distribution, we distributed the RFP on September 18th, 3 days after your September 15th meeting, to 27 consultant firms. We set a reasonable deadline of October 30th, giving the consultants 45 days to put together a proposal. Unfortunately, towards the end of that deadline, we didn't receive any proposals. So on October 27th, we extended it to November 13th, and at that time, we received 4 proposals. The proposals received were from Diet and Bhatia, MIG, Opticos Design, and De Novo Planning Group. And the subcommittee, council subcommittee, agreed to interview 2 of the consultants, Opticos Design and De Novo. So, the interview. The council subcommittee conducted interviews on January 15th, 2016. The 2 different consulting groups, they did contrast, which was an interesting interview, and that was deliberate because the subcommittee, very creative in their selection, wanted to kind of see the differences between approach in developing a long-term vision for the community. Opticos Design, their whole approach would be to create almost like little area plans spread out throughout the community, where policies and programs would be very specific to distinct neighborhoods. However, the downside is that there would be a lot of staff involvement in that approach. A zoning ordinance wasn't included in their proposal. The number of elements were really unknown. They wanted the process to kind of dictate that on what the public wanted to see. And in the end, we would potentially have a document that was almost foreign to what we typically know, which was the strength of De Novo, is that they had positive energy. They would create a general plan similar to our current. There would be less staff involvement. They would be very involved. In fact, they even said, you should create an office for us because we're going to be here. And they would have 4 additional elements, as well as include a zoning ordinance. So the council subcommittee recommendation, the council subcommittee recommended De Novo. They requested that the consultant consider a new traffic and economic development specialist. These were the sub-consultants to the main consultant. So I contacted the consultant and asked if they were willing to change out 2 of their subs, and they said, sure, we will do whatever the city wants us to do in that regard. So they provided some suggestions. Those suggestions were then forwarded to the subcommittee. And there really hasn't been any confirmation on acceptance of those replacements. And the subcommittee also suggested altering the scope of work to help expedite the update process and provide an expanded work product. So the scope of work changes. On February 5th, 2016, the council subcommittee met to recommend changes. So as you recall, on the RFP that was approved by the city council, there were numerous meetings that pretty much staff took our best guess as to how many meetings there would be and how to effectively involve the public and have plenty of planning commission meetings and city council meetings, et cetera. So the agreement here, at least from what the consultant felt they could modify, and what the subcommittee looked at was to merge these land use and community workshop meetings together into the GPAC meetings, and that would be about 30 meetings. Create 5 neighborhood community meetings where we would have individual meetings throughout the city. We would have one meeting in the San Tomas area, we would have one meeting over by the Lee area, et cetera, and just kind of have them throughout the community. One in the downtown, and then bring it back and have one community-wide workshop actually at the OCBH. Conduct one joint workshop between groupings of city boards, commissions, and committees. Conduct 2 joint meetings between the City Council and Planning Commission. Conduct 4 public hearings with the Planning Commission, and 6 with the City Council. So what that did essentially is the total meetings that were identified in the original RFP were 71. That would bring down the total meetings to 51. Of course, this would achieve a processing time reduction. Monthly status report still would be provided to the City Council, so the council will always be up to date as to what's happening. But then a new task was added and I hopefully I captured this correctly. That's why on the attachments I said there still may be work on this one task. But there was this notion of understanding how land uses that the intensities of land uses that we established in the city would create impacts, either negative or beneficial, that would affect economy, circulation, water availability, air quality, community services, housing, et cetera, and kind of break that down into low, medium, and high range approaches. And from a staff perspective, as we look at that, that's a really great analysis. One that may be more appropriately contained in an EIR, because usually your land use element is going to not have 3 scenarios. It will be, this is the land use that we want. It's not going to have 3 different, but the subcommittee can help clarify what they were wanting to input in the scope. So the professional service agreement, the way the city has always looked at professional service agreements, after the city council approves the scope, then that scope is inserted into our standard form that the city attorney has approved, and then the professional service agreements would be then approved by the city manager. Project cost. The project cost was determined to be basically $872,000 for the Envision Campbell Plan, the EIR, and the Climate Action Plan. That was per the original scope. The zoning ordinance had a cost of about $87,000. However, fewer meetings should equal less cost, to which staff would basically negotiate a cost reduction. And we're pretty good at doing that. General plan maintenance fees are trending well to cover the project costs through the life of the project. The zoning ordinance scope, depending on where we're moving with the Envision Campbell Plan update, that scope may need further refinement. We could certainly hold the consultant to the $87,000, but that would be your traditional style zoning ordinance. If the city council wants to go a different route, then the subcommittee is suggesting that we commit the consultant to the 87, but then reserve the right to renegotiate a different zoning ordinance should the council feel that's the way to go. So the recommendation is twofold. The City Council Subcommittee recommends that the City Council approve the selection of the de novo planning group, approve the revised scope, and then staff recommends that the City Council authorize the city manager to negotiate, award, and execute the contract with the de novo planning group. That concludes staff's report. If you have any questions.
All right, thank you for that extensive report. That really covers a lot of ground and sort of explains kind of where we've been. Are there any questions from council? Councilmember Kwiatkowski.
I just want to comment, well done.
Thank you.
It's nice to see the order of things. It's been tough, We can all attest to that because we've been going through everything from civic center master plans. And we've been busy, so have you, and we understand that. Thank you all.
Yeah, and
yes,
the subcommittee did a lot of this work as well, so I would thank them as well. But I agree with you, Councilmember Katalski. You know, putting this together really is showing the public all the different steps, and it was really neat kind of doing
Well,
that.
it's kind of opened my eyes. This is, I think we did this twice. The first time I was on the council, right after I got on and just before I got off. And then there was all this time has changed, and, you know, now I'm getting reminders. And the only thing I remember saying when we first talked about it is, boy, there's a lot of experienced people. That should speed things up. And the technology has changed. That should speed things up because, folks, it normally took, what, 3 to 4 years or more? And well over $1 million to put together one of these things. So we're under the million. It looks like we'll be under the 3-year. And the organization is really unique. So those of you that are participating, I'm not. I'm one of the stand outside and watch. But I'm enjoying it. And thanks again.
All right. Any other questions? All right. You know, I didn't ask this beforehand. That I will say up front, this is still, even the reduced number of meetings from 70 something to 50 something, and all that seems like quite an exhaustive process. And either in your experience or from what you know, and if you don't know tonight, that's fine. Is this similar to what other cities go through? I mean, other cities our size. It's an awful lot of things. And if the Vice Mayor wants to tell me that this is what we must do, then feel free.
If I may perhaps take staff off the hook, Councilmember Christina and I did go over this quite extensively. It boiled down to the fact that we wanted this done in less than 2 years. It's a general plan update. It is an EIR as well. It involves public hearings and planning commissions on both of those documents. We combined as many meetings as we could, but if you do the numbers out over a 2-year period, it really isn't much. There's a couple of meetings up front, and then there's regular meetings for the GPAC, and then there's cluster meetings at the end to review drafts and get final approvals. It was a huge number. We kept looking at it and looking at it, and frankly, we were very pleased we got it down to 51.
Well, thank you for that, because 51 is better than 71.
Yeah, really, yeah. And I think the other consultant had a 1-week charrette with the council.
Holy goodness.
And 5 days, and all that kind of stuff. So it was a fascinating process.
Yeah.
So it's not as bad as it sounds when you realize it's over 2 years.
That makes it sound worse in some ways, but I get it. All right. Well,
All those meetings are ours.
any other comments or
May I
questions?
address that as well?
Or smart comments? Yeah.
Vice Mayor hit it pretty much on the head. My motivation wasn't specifically to get it within a specific time frame. That I did have that motivation initially, and then recognizing after reviewing all 4 and seeing the numbers from everybody, no matter what, it's an exhaustive process, and this is actually relatively bare bones. I mean, when you look at what we're trying to do, I think what it was 11 different elements. Was that the final? So 11 elements, and you have 30 meetings to be able to hash out all the details of 11 elements. I mean, it can be, you know, just looking at that aspect alone. And they had, I believe, 10 planning commission council meetings joint. So we really tried to negotiate it because we're getting updates. And I believe we have enough to be able to negotiate and work with them. And there's one thing that I did want to comment on too. So there's going to be less meetings, about 20 give or take. That should be able to decrease the cost, but we did ask for in the revised scope a bit more, which is the 3 options, because we were able to be presented with visuals of 3, and it was outstanding to be able to see and to be like, that's what what each option on that corner will look like. And it was an exceptional experience to learn from. But that being said, we are adding a little bit, so that might adjust the cost. And one thing I really liked about De Novo was in their initial proposal, they did state that if extra meetings were necessary, they're going to give us a final product at the cost quoted. So they're not going to try and nickel and dime us. 2 more meetings, we're going to charge you. That wasn't a part of what they were talking about. Said, here's our number, here's what you're going to get. And that's really impressive when we're talking about such a giant scope of work and so many variables. And they did really want to almost be on site. They want a location here to get work done because they are going to do a lot of the heavy lifting, which is outstanding. And they were price-wise edible.
Competitive, yeah. All right. Councilmember Reskoff,
Yes.
do you have?
Yeah, 2 quick things, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. To the committee, was there an intent for the final contract to come back to council for final approval? Did I miss this in the? I'm sorry if I missed it. I know in the staff reports. I don't know if you addressed that.
The meat of the contract, the heart and soul of it lies in the scope. So once you bless the scope, then it is embedded into our standard professional service agreement that has the hold harmless, the right to perform, insurance requirements, how we pay them, who we pay to, all the other stuff that really is more administrative. So we're separating what the policy document is, that's the scope, and then the administrative stuff we can handle.
Okay, but I was thinking more if there was a cost change or something like that. But oh, okay, the other question I had for staff, if you will, is so this has been a many months long process. Has there been communication to the GPAC members of the process of what's going on? And do we know the makeup? Has that changed, or it's been a long time here? It's a big commitment to people.
Yeah.
We now have an idea of the number of meetings, which, by the way, is only 25 and a half per year if you average it down, which is only like 2 a month. So really, when you think about it, it's nothing, less than 1 a week. But has there been something to reach out and see that we still have the same makeup or interest? It's been a long time.
There has, it has been at least 2 to 3 months that we haven't blanketed the GPAC with an overall update as to where we are. I've had individual conversations with different GPAC members, but I think the last blanket email I sent out indicating status was late December.
There appears to be, from the conversation you had, just the same continued interest.
Yeah, but I remember back in late December, I indicated that what the steps were going to be in terms of the subcommittee interviewing and selecting, and then going back to the council. And I said, end of February, beginning of March, we'd be back.
Within that time frame.
Yeah, so we're on schedule in that regard. But I think what you're maybe alluding to is, we need to contact the GPAC and let them know what's happening. And I know that the city managers talked about maybe holding a kind of a briefing meeting with them. The concern that we also talked internally was, it also was very clear that the council wanted the consultant to have to be with the GPAC and have those meetings. So we didn't want to overstep our role either.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? If not, I'll open the public hearing for any public comment. I thought it was 2, but I have Susan Landry. Maybe I was wrong. Thank you for doing.
Hello again. I was fortunate enough to start out as an alternate, but now I'm on the GPAC. I want to thank you guys. I want to thank Paul and everybody else in the subcommittee for all the work. It's been quite a lengthy process, and I've rolled up my sleeves. I'm ready to go, and I'm looking forward to this happening. I think it's really going to be good for the overall benefit to Campbell. And when you count out the meetings per 2 years, it's 2 a month if we all go to everything, and I don't think that's too bad. I do want to know if it's a time and materials against a fixed fee, or if they get the whole fee regardless. That way, if it's a time and materials and the committee gets really good and we all agree quickly, maybe there isn't that number of meetings. That would be a good idea. So I don't know the makeup of the contract right now, but it would be nice to have it be time and materials not to exceed, but to give the option of like, here's an extra 10 meetings. If we don't need them, you don't get paid for them kind of stuff. So thank you again, and I really look forward to us moving forward.
All right, thank you. Did you want to, one of you want to address that?
Well, I don't think that we can address it at this point.
Well,
We
you
don't have.
can give spontaneous comments, but I thought that's where you were turning your light
Oh,
on.
I was just asking a question.
So let me, can I finish the public hearing first? Or
Yeah.
do-
No, because I was going to be the staff.
Okay. Is there any other member of the public who wishes to speak on this item? Come on up. Same rules. Your light will turn green when you start to speak. You'll have 2 minutes. You know the drill.
I do. I'm Joanne Fairbanks, a resident of Campbell. I've got bullets here. I really appreciate the comprehensive staff report. I see this as good homework for GPAC. It's just fantastic. I especially appreciate the work of the subcommittee, and part of that was their emphasis around community by community. This is that ground up kind of decision, and community deciding what Campbell is to be rather than some other way. A comment: how long it takes is how long it takes from my perspective. It's more important for me to do it well rather than expeditiously. The general plan as we have it, in my view, is not broken, but it does need a lot of adjustment. Regarding the rescope of the work, I appreciate the return that the committee pushed towards, again, that collaborative kind of thing, from 71 meetings to the prospective consultants that got it down to 19 on a revisit, and you brought it back up to 51. Way to go. Regarding dividing the city into 5 segments for community meetings, I'd love to make sure that those meetings appear welcome to all segments, to all of the city. And I like the number of public meetings, city council, planning commission. I just like the way this is done. Regarding land use, this task is critical. It is a battle over how Campbell wants to be because of where it sits in this region, right? Actually, I think that's it, and it's red.
All right.
Did I go too far over the red?
Nah, I was keeping one eye on it.
Oh,
Thank you.
I know you would,
Does
Jason.
any member of the public
Thank
wish to
you.
speak on this item? If not, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to council for discussion.
Before, may I have a
Yeah,
question?
sure. You
How many alternates have actually made it to the GPAC? I don't recall that information. It was all of them? How many members have we lost?
We lost 1 member. They moved out of the area, so we have a 19-member GPAC right now. We used to have 20, now we have 19.
Yeah. Okay, great.
All right, and I'll give the subcommittee members first crack at commenting if they'd like to.
Okay.
Vice Mayor Gibbons.
So.
And I'm sorry, thank you both for your service on this. I know it was a lot of work, and I appreciate you guys both coming from different perspectives and getting this done.
I think we did pretty well, actually. So if I missed something, let me know. Okay. So I have 2 minor tweaks on the cost issue, which is, as has been discussed, I think we need to use that number or a round number close to it. But I do think we should put a contingency number in that because you don't want to have to come back to council every time something gets goofed up. And you should include for the total contract amount, which I didn't see in the draft resolution, for the zoning, because we have a number for it with a contingency for that. I put the whole thing together. I think that would be better going forward. It's just a thought on how others would think. And Okay, so just to, staff report was very, very good. I thought we would just clarify that we did ask the schedules were 2.5 and 3 years, 3.5 years and stuff, and we really did want to try and bring it back to 2 years. The reason being that there's so much going on in Campbell, we really feel that it's important to do a document as soon as reasonably possible, not to shortcut the quality. The consultant was perfectly fine with that, so that was good. One big difference from both consultants, as staff alluded to, one consultant was going to do more or less a separate document for different areas around the city, separate general plan. This consultant is going to subdivide the general plan. So our general plan right now is yay thick, and it includes an introductory background statistical section at the beginning of each one. Those are all going to be done as a separate document, standalone document, so that, if you will, the meat of the general plan is more accessible. And we thought that was a good idea, so that we agreed to do, which is a little different than the original scope. And we talked about the staffing. And as far as the consultant change goes, Paul, I think we have a misunderstanding here. I think the subcommittee agreed that if they proposed these two people, these groups, knowing what we said to them and what we were looking for, they gave one additional economic development person that sounded fine, and they could pick the best of the traffic ones. Not you, but the consultant would pick the one that they thought best met our needs, knowing what we were critiquing in the previous ones. And I'm fine with whatever they recommend. And that also will influence the cost a little bit, because we don't have costs for those two consultants. That's why you want to have a little flexibility there. The 3-level options. Councilmember Christina just said it. We actually do want it in the discussion of the general plan. We do not anticipate, correct me if I'm wrong, that the general plan would include 3 options, but we want to have it in the discussion.
That was my understanding as well from what we were talking about, is to have this for a greater understanding.
Yeah, right.
And variety.
For variety, right,
Yeah.
exactly. To really know what if we do this, this is what it means. If we do
Yeah.
this is what it means, you know.
Which
Okay.
is why we had all the extra things building up to the 3 designs.
Right.
So the water quality.
Exactly. And I thought the other thing that this consultant did, which you just spoke to, is they had a lot of visuals.
Yeah.
And it really was enormously helpful in an area by area as needed understanding of what it was going to be at the end product. So everybody had both verbal, written, and visual understandings. A couple of things that are still a little waffly, but I think they're going to have to evolve with the, bumpy, with the city attorney and the GPAC and things, is we're including all of the master plans, and a lot of things are going to be absorbed into the general plan. They're not going to be many standalone documents. The challenge is going to be the how to handle the Santa Tomas area plan, because I think that's a separate legal document that says it has to be incorporated in. Anyway, that's something that's not totally clear. And we also are in the process of doing an area plan for the Cambrian Village, Campbell Village area. So there might be some tweaking there. You might want to do the Campbell Village area first as opposed to later, because that's the one that's right in the middle of commitments. So stuff like that can be worked out. Let's see. Time and materials, I have to, forgive me, don't agree with time and materials. I think it's going to take the staff it's going to take to do the work. And yes, you may not have as many meetings, although I'd be surprised. The work needs to be done.
Yeah.
And I'm comfortable with that. Please.
I would like the idea of time and materials, but I believe we're pretty bare bones, and we might be going a little over in reality.
And they've said
gonna
they're
be
not going to
very challenging.
nickel and dime us on the other side.
Exactly.
So, what's quid pro quo kind of
Yeah.
thing. And The other comment was, should all the city be invited into the 5 neighborhoods or however many neighborhoods? We actually did that deliberately as well. Councilmember Christina, do you want to make your point?
So one of the main reasons we were trying to figure out two things, and I believe this was really adjusting or commenting on two different problems that we were having. One of the main problems was we have a section of the city that has no representation, and so we would like to have representation there. And also, how do we get to make sure that these 5 meetings aren't dominated by the same people? And so if we're able to separate out by neighborhood, then we'll be able to get representation in the neighborhood that is underrepresented by the current GPAC, because no one actually applied in just probably 2 square miles of the city, which is pretty significant. But no, there were no applicants there, so we had no opportunity to be able to select someone from the area. And also that the individual areas will be able to speak to their flavor of their community. And so there's some pretty positive sides about breaking it down into individual groups, and then we do have the one main group where everyone gets to come after and be as one to be able to voice their opinion, and they'll have that opportunity. So we're not stopping people from voicing their opinion, we're just not allowing any dominant forces, and we're trying to get the individual feels for the a selected group de novo, so they can understand each of the individuals as well as the community as a whole.
Right. I mean,
Did I say that right?
You said it very well, because it's very easy to focus on the downtown or Bascom Ave.
Exactly.
We don't. That's not what your general plan is about. It's about the community, and all the consultants, and certainly de novo, said they could get involved with the community and get community participation, because we told them there are certain places it's going to be a challenge. Okay, we
Yes,
were
we
not
did.
shy about letting them know that, and they said, not a problem, we can handle it. So they have to handle it, okay, and we want them to. So that was really good. Let's see, I think that was it. So I just recommend that the financial changes.
All right. Thank you, and thank you again for your work. Councilmember Christina.
Yeah, just to kind of jump on top of that, I think this was really touched on exceptionally well by Vice Mayor and Paul. I mean, Paul trying to wrangle the two of our opinions, that's a heck of a challenge. I believe we did work really well together, building off each other's ideas, but that can still be a bit of a challenge, because we did jump around from spot to spot occasionally, and you did a very good job of bringing that together in this report. And I believe this will be great homework for the GPAC to be able to take home and to be able to grow and learn from, especially starting off. But that being said, the one main thing that I would like to see, and I know it's a bit different than in just standard contractual agreements, is before this is awarded, even though it will put a little bit of time, have it come back to us just for a final review. I would like to see it. Even though there's going to be a lot of administrative information that's in the document, if we can get that, just to make sure that there aren't significant differences, or if there is price change, there's probably during negotiations going to be some slight variances here or there that I have a preference of being able to review. So if the council agrees with where we are right now and this works out, I'll be very happy with that. But to say, all right, here we go, it could vary within $100,000, I would suspect. I think that would be the exception, but I think that would be a possibility. I mean, we're scratching a very significant amount. I mean, just off meetings alone, it's about percentage-wise. So that, but
I don't, may I?
yeah, please.
Sure.
We're losing our protocol. I don't disagree. The one thing we might do is, I think the consultant should look at the scope, should review it, should discuss it with staff, and it's likely they will tweak it, and then the staff will come up with the bottom line, and then we'll have whatever we have left for contingency. If the consultant wants to come to a council meeting and be introduced and say, here's the contract, and we can look at it in advance in case there's some big hiccup for us. There's nothing wrong with meeting the consultant.
That would be great. Yeah, if they'd be able to come and present themselves and throw the invitation out to the GPAC. That's a great idea.
Okay.
See, we build off each other.
That's right.
So, are there any other questions I'd be able to answer?
Place might be okay after I leave. You, Councilmember Kutowski?
Yeah, just a couple of things, and I'm sorry I didn't thank you folks first for doing a heck of a good job, and but the staff sometimes doesn't get a good thank you, so this is an opportunity to do a pat on the back. You mentioned something, Madam Vice Mayor, about being sure to include the Santa Mas areas. That was a question, and Cambrian. And as you know, one of the things that I have been kind of loud about is not doing the Dell Avenue plan until this plan is done. There's a reason for that. Excuse me. In the scope, I would hope, would take a good look at speculation, future speculation, on the impacts of the surrounding cities' developments, mainly San Jose and Los Gatos, north and south. And that is going to have to be addressed under the circulation element specifically, because we're going to be pretty well crowded. And with regards to time and materials, no on that. That should not be an issue. What you should have, and that's going to be staff doing it, is good, strong oversight so that costs don't get out of hand on materials and things like that. And should there be a problem materially, that we're the first to find out about it, not the last. So thank you very much.
All right. Did you have a response?
Just a clarification. The Councilmember Kutowski just said something very well. When the contract amount is sorted, it should have a cost per deliverable or per phase, and you pay to that, and that's it. You don't just keep paying and paying and paying until you run out of money and don't have what you want. So it should be by deliverable. That was what you want. Thank you. Excellent comment.
Councilmember Vesikoff.
Thank you. My compliments to the subcommittee too, because this was beyond the scope of what most committees do here, volume-wise. So thank you. Just a quick thing. I agree with Councilman Kutowski about seeing the ultimate contract, but to save time, and we have some experts here, I would suggest that if there are changes, or at least for final review, maybe it goes back to the committee. If the committee then blesses it with a recommendation to council, I think it'll move quicker through here, and a lot of the questions will be answered. So that's a good way to get the council review, but more efficiently, and not potentially come to this meeting, have to continue to another meeting and waste 2 weeks. So
You have to take my place at some other meeting then.
Yeah, exactly.
I've already won. I already owe you one, so why not?
I owe her a couple as well. All right. Anything else? Look, I am definitely grateful for the work of the subcommittee, and you all did good work to get us a lot farther along the process. And I will vote for this, and in somewhat in deference to the subcommittee's work. I still think, and I asked the question about whether or not we have cities of our size that are comparable to us in kind of our situation, and sort of knowing that it's hard to find that, and that we don't have that. We've got Sunnyvale in here, we've got Cupertino, which I think is a much more complicated city, Morgan Hill, Gilroy, which is sort of big geographically and can present some challenges. I mean, I come back to the fact that we began this process sort of agreeing, I think, among ourselves that we don't anticipate there's going to be a lot of changes to this general plan, and I know that we might find out things that the public wants to make more changes than we would like. Although I think that we also said some of those things we might disagree with them. And a GPAC can't plan our city. It just can't. And so I think that it's important. Their input is important. I think I'm a little concerned about the burden on them, frankly, and I know that we have a couple of eager members who are willing to sign up for those meetings, but over a couple of years, it's a lot to ask. And I think when we're talking about a city that's 6 square miles that is relatively happy with the direction of the general plan, we want to add a few elements in, maybe add a health element in. We want to work on the traffic element. I wish there was a way, and I'm deferring to the subcommittee in that they probably thought of this and decided there wasn't a way, but I wish there was a way to focus more on the elements, the new elements, the elements that we know that we want to change, and reduce the burden on the GPAC I am also always skeptical of joint planning commission council meetings because I've found them not productive in my history, not because of either side, but just because of the logistics, the number of people, and the dynamics among the two. But I just wanted to say that, and then I'll vote yes.
If I may.
Yes.
And Council Member Christina, may comment. I think I said when we had an update to the council a month or so ago after we'd had the interviews that I had changed my opinion. Doesn't happen often. I really would. I know it's on record now. I would very much like to do a tweak. But when you read all the proposals and you sat in all the interviews and you heard what people said and you looked at what we had, it made sense that we add the new elements, that we have to go back and look at the housing element and make it consistent. They're going to make it so that the EIR, and I'm going to overstate this, but the EIR is not going to be, I'm going to say, concurrent with the plan because you don't do that, but that the EIR will be smooth and straightforward because the plan will address the issues within the EIR process. And then we have the climate action plan and things like that. It's more than I realized we would needed to do, frankly. And I'm disappointed to have to say that.
Look, it's important, and that's part of the reason I'm deferring, because you've delved deeper than, dived deeper than I. I mean, I will say that, look, if they come back and say we need a lot more density or we need less density, I think we're less likely to hear that. And I'd be reluctant to have a whole process that comes up with something that we are less likely to adopt. Councilmember Christina.
So the way that I see it too is from everything that I've learned from the subcommittee and the reviews and interviews is that when you open one element, you're opening a can of worms because they're all attached. So tweaking one thing means you need to review pretty much everything. I mean, depending how it goes. And so when you kind of start that avalanche, you kind of need to open it up. And Opticos and DeNovo both offered, the other two companies offered traditional, here's what you have, we're just going to scratch some things. These two companies offered us kind of a fresh perspective and an end product that is going to be easy to use for the layman. So the person that's coming in that doesn't read general plans, they will understand what is happening in this. And they were both completely different end results. But the way that the end result of what we're going to get is going to be a very easy, workable product. So their product will be under 100 pages, their general plan, not a 4-inch binder. We will have the index, which will have more information, but it'll be cut and dry, and it'll have a lot of pretty vivid images, so you'll be able to understand visually exactly what's going to be going on in these areas. So you'll have a visual feel of the future of the community. And for DeNovo, I was just about to really change the subject. wasn't what I was trying to do, but I think that to be able to deliver the product that they want, even if they're not going to be making many changes, they still have to rewrite it. And it because they're giving us an easier to read and understand and use product, so it needs to be recrafted. And so even if there's not going to be significant changes, which I from day one, I like the idea of looking at all of it, not changing all of it, but reviewing. I think that it was absolutely necessary for their process to be able to do that. And then one other thing, you said that you don't want to put all the weight on the GPAC and that they can't plan the city. And they're not going to. The way that I see DeNovo's involvement in this, and especially because they're going to be really heavily involved, I believe that they're going to be really guiding and just, here's a sentence, what's incomplete. getting that from the community and putting that together. And I'm not sure if that was a clear analogy, but they're going to be basically writing it, and the community is going to be kind of guiding it. And so it with them and for how heavily they're going to be involved, it'll be much easier for the GPAC to be able to be involved and to have pretty significant say. And I believe De Novo will be realistic in their approach about, all right, if you want that, that's great, but that might not work because of this. And not guiding, not saying this is what you want or anything along those lines. Saying this is kind of what we have, framework that's realistic. What color works in this picture within this part of the frame, if you will. I mean, they have a really interesting style, and I think it's going to work the best with the GPAC, with what council had talked about in our previous meetings. And when you look at their style and what they have to do, we really have to open it all up because it'll be rewritten. So I understand your issue, but from our conversations, I mean, we had some back and forth, and to be quite frank, and I believe we had this conversation too, we were both excited about the prospect of De Novo and Opticos and a little hesitant because they were outside the box. Neither one is a traditional general plan, but they both would present outstanding final product. And I think we picked the one that's going to be the most realistic for our community. So it was
Yeah.
a learning experience.
It sounds like, and thank you for that. And I will underline, I think you made a great point, which I definitely take to heart, which is even if we don't change a thing, getting community understanding and buy-in of this is perhaps the most critical product of this process. And that's right. Paul?
If I may, that pretty much was the gist of, you said it in many minutes fewer than I would have said it. But thank you for pointing out as a 100-page document. Because, by the way, that is a document size that you can get your hands around, that people can use, that's useful, that isn't thousands and thousands of pages. My comment was going to be on the tweaking. I didn't hear anybody say that they wanted to do more than tweaking, but the purpose of us not saying what to tweak was to let the community come in with what they wanted to tweak, which means you have to open it up to everybody. And ultimately, it may be more work on the GPAC people than they thought, but the ultimate authority is going to come back here ultimately, and also through these other meetings. So I think there's probably some hope or expectation that not everything will be torn apart and started over. But I suspect that things will be tweaked and changed, that if it just stayed with the council, would not have been tweaked and changed. And that was the reason, we had some discussion on it, that there are no council members on the GPAC, and there are no, in fact, commissioners on the GPAC. This was truly community, and we may hear things that we never even would have considered, may hear things we don't like, but the purpose is to get the input, and that, I think, is why we're doing it. And leaving it open for that, opening it for that reason, I think, is a good one.
All right. Unless there's any other comments, I will entertain a motion. I'm not doing it.
I'll do.
I can't find the page. Go for it.
I'll do it, and then you can.
Okay.
I'll gladly second.
All right, Vice Mayor Gibbons, you have the honors.
I recommend that the City Council adopt the attached resolution modified for the financial analysis we came up with for a total amount, including the zoning, and that the finance have a deliverable breakdown. Authorizing the following actions regarding the preparation of Envision Campbell Plan that will be brought back to Council for a sign-off with and introduction to the council of the consultant to the council. Approve the selection of De Novo Planning Group to facilitate the preparation of the Envision Campbell Plan. And 2, approve the scope of work changes for the consultant services. And 3, authorize the city manager to award the contract for De Novo Planning Group and enter into a professional services agreement.
Second.
Just 1 second, Vice Mayor. So brought back to the City Council via the subcommittee?
The subcommittee can review the final document,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
That would make
Perfect.
a lot of sense.
Okay, so it's been moved by Chair, Vice Mayor Gibbons, seconded by Councilmember Christina. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Katalski?
Aye.
Councilmember Resnikoff?
Aye.
Councilmember Christina?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Gibbons?
Aye.
Mayor Baker?
Aye. The motion carries unanimously.